By what name are you known?
There are some who call me Tim.
Welcome to another episode of Timmy Talks, the channel where we talk old school magic. And today we are in Tokyo, Japan for a very special match. This is Alpha 40 Japanese style. And the reason I'm saying Japanese style is because I'm not quite sure what rule set of Alpha they're playing. There are basically two main rule sets in Alpha, which is Alpha 40, which is kind of the old school way of playing it. You can play with how many copies you want of a card in your deck. So you can play with, like, let's say 10 Ancestral Recalls, 20 Lightning Bolts, that's all good. Of course, you can only play with 40 cards and you have no sideboard. But besides those two basic rules, you can pretty much do everything as long as the cards are printed in Alpha. Now you also have Alpha 40 League rules, and that's a little bit more complex. You've got like rules, for example, cards from the draw group, you can only play one. There are just more rules to make Alpha 40 a little bit more balanced, which in itself is kind of funny because it's fun because it's so unbalanced. But I do think it's a good effort, and Alpha 40 League has really taken off because you get to construct more interesting decks, have more interesting games with the Alpha cards. But in today's match, when I'm looking at the deck pictures, and I'll show them to you in a moment, I cannot really discover what rule set they're applying. For example, one of the players is playing with 4 Time Walks, so they do keep to the limit of 4 cards, of a 4 maximum copy per card, if you can still follow. If you would play the original Alpha rules, you could play with as many Time Walks as you want, but this player only plays with 4. If you play with the Alpha 40 League rules, you're not allowed to play with 4 Time Walks. So it's quite interesting to see the deck construction here. Another thing I noticed is one player is playing with 4 Lightning Bolts. So if you would say, okay, you can play with as many copies as you want, you would say, okay, let's just play with 20 Lightning Bolts. Anyway, more will be clear when I show you the deck. First, also a quick shout out to Nikolai. Thank you so much, my friend, for sharing these decks with me, for sharing the content with me. You're a great friend, and thank you. I love to show this content. Nikolai is a Frenchman living in Tokyo, playing old school Magic, organizing old school events there with his friends, and it's super cool to see Magic all the way from Japan here on Timmy Talks. Now today we have Kato, who's playing a deck that's called Serra Balance, so you probably won't be shocked to see Serra Angels and Balances in here, and he is taking on Urushisan. Sorry, my Japanese pronunciation is pretty awful. He is playing white, blue, and red, and he's also playing with Serra Angels and Balances. His deck is called the Time Traveler. Like, he's the player I just talked about that plays with 4 Time Walks. I think these games are going to be absolutely crazy. Before I jump into the deck text, though, because I've got lovely deck photos of both of the decks, first a quick message from our sponsor, 341 Trading. 341 Trading is one of Europe's leading Magic the Gathering retailers. Their online shop has a fantastic selection of high-end Magic cards, especially for vintage, legacy, and yes, old school Magic players. They now exclusively offer my community free, fully insured, and fast worldwide shipping on all their high-end singles, full sets, and out-of-print sealed products. They upload new cards every Wednesday and have weekly sale offers and reductions waiting just for you. Use my code TIMMY to get free worldwide shipping on your first order over $500 or euros. Have fun ordering those cards, and thank you 341 Trading for sponsoring this video. And we are back and ready to dive into those deck techs. We're going to start with the player on the left, and he's playing Time Traveler. Let's take a look. And here we see the deck of Urushisan. So this deck is called Time Traveler, and I already talked a little bit about the rules in the introduction that I wasn't quite sure what rules they're playing by, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. I see a lot of Alpha cards, but I also see Collector's Edition, International Edition. I see some Unlimiteds in here. So I think it's clear that they're allowed to play with reprint copies of the cards as long as they're printed with the same art. I'm not quite sure if Revised is also allowed because I'm not seeing any Revised. So maybe it's ABU and Collector's Edition and International Edition. That could be kind of where they draw the line. Also with the rules according to the amount of cards that they are allowed to play with, I'm not quite sure because we're seeing somebody here playing with 3 Ancestral Recalls. And I know that according to the Alpha 40 League rules, you can only play with 1 Ancestral Recall max. So you would think maybe there's no maximum, maybe they're playing traditional alpha, but when you're playing traditional alpha, you can play with as many copies as you want. So for example, why then would you only play with 4 copies of Lightning Bolt? So it's interesting. When I'm looking at this, I think maybe the rule is that you can play with 4 of any card. So there's no limit to that. So you can just do that if you have the cards. Of course, there are not a lot of players that have like 4 Ancestral Recalls. As a matter of fact, when I'm looking at this list, I'm a little bit jealous of Urushisan, to be honest, because he's got 4 Time Walks. How cool is that? He's got 3 Ancestral Recalls. I'm really jealous. But it's going to be really fun to see these decks at work. I mean, it's going to be super broken, right? Time Walk gives you an extra turn. He's got 4 Time Walks. Ancestral Recall is an instant for 1 blue that allows you to draw 3 cards. He's got 3 of those, right? Which is sick. And then we've got Balance. And I mean, Balance I'm going to talk about more in the other deck because that deck is called Balance. But Balance also is a super broken card. There's a reason that these cards are restricted. But it is going to be cool to kind of see a format where we don't have those restrictions. And I haven't even talked about the Black Lotuses. Have you seen the Black Lotuses? There are 3 Black Lotuses in this deck. I mean, this is going to be sick. I think it's going to be super common for this deck to start with like just emptying your hand with all those Mana Rocks and Black Lotuses. Just emptying your hand on turn 1. Followed up by a Time Twister and a Time Walk, because that's of course really good. If you can play a Time Walk and then a Time Twister, it means you get to draw 7 new cards and you get to start with those 7 new cards. So I think this deck really revolves around Time Walk and Time Twister. And if I would have to give an advice to Urushisan, I would say try to get more Time Twisters. I think that would make the deck even better, because Time Walk, Time Twister, that is a sick combination of cards. Anyway, what more can I say? This is totally broken. Only 2 creatures, by the way, just 2 Serra Angels. Totally broken. It's going to be a lot of fun to look at this. I'm so looking forward to see this deck Time Traveler in action. But before we do though, first let's take a look at the deck of his opponent. And here we see the deck of Kato, and I now just noticed that there are red cards in here. I thought it was just blue and white, but there's a Disintegrate in here, and that Disintegrate is pretty important. Maybe that's actually the win con of this deck. And here we see, by the way, 5 Mox Sapphires. So I first said that I thought the limit was 4 copies of a card. That's not true. He's playing with 5 Mox Sapphires. It's insane. Okay, so this deck is called The Balance, which is funny because it's the most unbalanced deck I've seen. Well, maybe not the most unbalanced deck. I've seen some crazy Alpha 40 decks, but it's definitely up there. This is just insane. Let's maybe first focus on Balance. What does that actually do? I'm just going to read the Alpha text of Balance to you as it is written on the card. And I think that's also part of the Alpha rules, is that you follow the text on the card and not the errata on the card or the changes that Wizards has made afterwards. You just follow the original printing on the card. So Balance says, whichever player has more lands in play must discard enough lands of his or her choice to equalize the number of lands both players have in play. So you start with lands. Cards in hand and creatures in play must be equalized the same way. Creatures lost in this manner may not be regenerated. So that's quite important, of course. And the thing with Balance is it doesn't include enchantments, it doesn't include artifacts, and especially artifacts is going to be key here for both players. Both players are playing with tons of Mana Rocks, Black Lotuses, Soul Rings. It's broken, right? And they're not included. So Balance is really good at limiting the amount of lands, limiting the amount of creatures, but both decks actually don't play with a lot of creatures. So Balance will mainly be a discard spell, I feel. It's just going to be a mind twist, because if you're the player on the play, you probably are going to have a lot of Moxen and Black Lotuses. You're going to dump your hand, and then in an ideal scenario, what you've got left is a Time Walk and a Balance. You would play your Time Walk, then you would play your Balance, right? And you would take care of the entire hand of your opponent, and that's of course a great start of the match. And your opponent will have 0 cards in hand without even having started the game, if you can still follow me, because this will all happen ideally on turn 1. So I mean, turn 1 is going to be super important in these matchups. I predict very short games. That's what I predict. I mean, this is just going to be nuts. Whoever starts has such a huge advantage looking at the broken stuff that they can do. But hey, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. Either way, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, in my opinion. One of the things I see here, though, in the deck, if we're looking at differences between the decks, is that in this deck we see 4 creatures, so that's a double amount of creatures compared to the other deck that's only playing 2 Serra Angels. This deck is playing 2 Serra Angels and 2 Juggernauts. I really like Juggernaut. I cannot say Juggernaut. I always have to say Juggernaut because it's just such a cool card. And besides that, both decks are basically trying to do the same, right? Doing that Time Walk, Time Twister thing I talked about. Doing really broken stuff with balance, having very explosive openings. So yeah, this is the deck called The Balance. Let me just have a look. Yeah, this is the deck by Kato. We looked at the deck of his opponent, and that means we are ready for probably one of the most craziest games we've ever seen here on the channel. Let's go to the Alpha 40 Tokyo Japan Clash. Game number 1, here we go. On the left we have Urushisan, who's on Time Traveler. So a deck with a lot of Time Walks and Time Twisters, and Kato on the right with a deck called The Balance. It's mainly white and blues, also playing with a single red card in there. And that red card is Disintegrate. Both players playing with some red burn. And here we see the opening by Kato, and yeah, it's just super, super broken. I like the Mona Lisa sleeves, by the way. Kind of fits the cards he's playing with. Taking an extra turn, drawing a card for turn. There's the Ancestral Recall. I gotta laugh because these guys, they have multiple copies of Ancestral Recall in their decks. So this looks like a really broken opening, but it's quite common with these type of decks. There's a Mox Sapphire, and just a reminder, this is still all happening in the first turn. Well, he took an extra turn, but his opponent, Urushi-san, hasn't gotten a single turn yet. And I think what he really needs here is a balance to kind of take care of the hand here of Urushi-san. Remember, Kato's deck is called The Balance, so I'm expecting a balance here, because then he would only lose that plateau, and you could take care of a lot of cards there in the hand of Urushi-san. There we see the balance, and look at that, he's even disenchanting one of his own artifacts, because he wants to discard more cards on the side of Kato, sorry, of Urushi-san. Kato is the player here, the balance player. Look at that, losing almost all the cards except for 2, though. So if he's got Black Lotus and Time Twister, that will be quite good for him. There we see a Soul Ring, passing the turn. So keeping that island in hand. There we see another Soul Ring, and just to pass, both players only playing with a few creatures in the deck. There we see an Ancestral Recall, so gonna draw 3 cards. There's a Brain Geyser in there, a Disenchant. Is that a Time Walk? That one blue card there, can't really see it. Yeah, this is a Time Walk, so he's gonna take an extra turn. Gonna take a damage for mana burn. He's on 19. There we see a Black Lotus. I mean, he's got the Brain Geyser, good Geyser here for a pretty big amount. Look at that, he is gonna Geyser. He's gonna go all out. Perhaps I would have kept 2 mana open to potentially play out the Time Walk. Then again, I mean, there's so many like Moxen and Artifact Man in here that you probably don't have to. Look at that, Mox Ruby, a dual land to Tundra here, tapping the Ruby. There's a Soul Ring, and there's the pass. Yeah, not really finding the Time Twister or the Time Walk here. So bad news actually for Urushi-san. Kato now taking his turn. There we see a creature hitting the board. Serra Angel. And Kato is playing with 2 Serra Angels and 2 Juggernauts, and Urushi-san is playing with only 2 Serra Angels. And he's got that balance in hand, of course, to take care of the Serra Angel. If he does that, though, he's going to lose his 2 lands. He's going to lose his only access to white mana. Well, I'm saying that, but he's got, of course, the Black Lotus. There we see the island. Oh man, this is like completely different Magic, right? When you play Alpha 40, it's a different game. It's so broken. But we're at an interesting juncture here. So I think he's contemplating: do I want to disenchant first? No, he's not. He's just saying, you know what? I'm just going to take a hit of 4 by the Angel. There's the attack. So he's going to drop to 15. There's another Serra Angel, second Serra found. Now this makes the balance of Urushi-san the more powerful. So next turn that balance is going to be quite devastating. Both players are, not playing with any counter magic. So they can do whatever they want. There's a disenchant on end step here, taking care of the Soul Ring. It's going to have little impact, I feel, but might as well do it since he's going to lose his hand to that balance. Wonder what card is in there. Gonna tap an island. Ooh, an Ancestral Recall. So he's gonna draw 3. Look at that. This is really good. He can dump that. He can play that. He can crack the Lotus, actually. Or doesn't have to. No, he doesn't have to. He can just go here for Time Walk and then, of course, play the balance. Or does he first want to have the information? First wants to have more information. There's another land there. Gonna play the land. And there's the balance. So the balance here taking care of the lands and the creatures. And of course the creatures are the important part here. And Urushisan on 15, of course, it was important for him to take care of the 2 Serra Angels. Kato already passed a turn here. And remember, Urushisan is playing with 4 lightning bolts and a fireball, I believe. There's one of the bolts. So Kato here dropping to 17. Kato is only playing with 1 Disintegrate as his direct damage. There's the pass. So both players perhaps just waiting for the direct damage. We haven't seen a single Time Twister. Maybe this was a Time Twister here for Urushisan from the top of the deck. Ooh, it looks like he's going to sack the Lotus here for 3 blue, I guess, if it's a Time Twister. Gonna sack one of them, tap the Soul Ring. Yep, there's the Time Twister. So both players are gonna shuffle back their cards in the deck. And they're gonna draw 7 new ones. Wow, this is insane. And I mean, it's very likely for Urushisan here to find a Time Walk. And then he can just take an extra turn. Still has 2 blue floating. Oh, there go the cards. Picking it up again. Shuffling, 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 and then just drawing 7 cards. And also 7 here drawn by Kato. And remember, Urushisan still has the turn. Currently on 15. Gonna use one of the blue mana. There's a Time Walk. Going to use the other one. There's another Time Walk, so going to take 2 extra turns after this one. Oh, that's so insane. That is so insane. He does have, I believe, a Serra Angel in hand. Another 2 Serra Angels in hand. Ooh, this could get really painful for Kato. First Serra Angel deployed. Unfortunately for him, though, he doesn't have enough mana to also play the second Serra Angel, I believe. So you just have to keep it to 1 Serra Angel. It's going to take his first extra turn. Going to be able to attack Kato here for 4. So going to draw a card for turn. Okay, there's a Brain Geyser. And he still has 1 extra turn to go. There's going to attack for 4 first. So Kato dropping to 13. And going to tap 2 more. Okay, there's a Time Walk again. So another turn after this one. I think maybe it's over for Kato, to be honest. I'm expecting to see another Serra Angel here. Yeah, there's the second Serra Angel. Now he's going to take his other turn. Still has a turn after this. Can attack for 8. Look at that. Kato picking up the cards. Realizing it's all over. And I'm now realizing that it is kind of interesting to see that both players are not playing with Counterspell. Pretty much saying, you know what? When it happens, it happens. I'm just going to let you go off all the way. I'm sure there's a reasoning behind it, but I would be tempted to play with a little bit of counter magic. Although, of course, you do need double blue for that, but I think it shouldn't be a problem with all those Mox Sapphires in the game. Anyway, first game here won by Urushisan and his Time Traveler deck. And now both players are going to shuffle up, and we'll catch back up with them in game number 2. Game number 2, here we go. So it's Kato, of course, on the play after losing that first game. And look at this. Urushisan is taking a mulligan. And interesting to note here is that in Alpha rules, the thing is you can only take a mulligan if you have no lands or only lands in your hand. And we see there the lightning bolt disappearing. And here we see Kato starting off with 2 soul rings. And I believe he also took a point of mana burn there. So it's going to drop to 19. And Urushisan here also starting with a Mox of his own, Mox Ruby. There's an Ancestral Recall, so going to draw 3 cards. And let's see what he can do. Actually, quite a modest opening by Kato, to be honest. And look at that, discarding a Wheel of Fortune, passing the turn. So both players not opening as explosively as I would have expected with these type of decks. There we see a balance here by Kato. So he's going to lose that 1 island. And then he probably has to discard a little. Let's see what cards he's going to throw away here. It's hard to see what the hands in front's throwing away. A land there and a Serra Angel. There's a pass. So really a different type of game compared to the game 1 that we saw. There we see an island. I do see a Time Walk in hand. Is he going to deploy Time Walk? So going to play Time Walk, going to take an extra turn. And there we see a Plateau. He does have a Time Twister in hand. Going to take another Time Walk though. And he's going to play the Lightning Bolt. So Kato dropping here to 16. There we see a Mox Pearl, of course. We have a Disenchant in hand and a Time Twister. He's going to go for Time Twister here. Time Twister being deployed by Urushisan. So both players are going to shuffle up and get some new cards. And I think if you're Urushisan, you're really hoping for, you know, a Black Lotus or a Mox Sapphire and of course a Time Walk, so you can immediately take an extra turn. And that's not that unlikely when you look at his list. Has a lot of Time Walks and also a lot of Moxen there. And also, of course, Kato drawing a fresh 7. And you can see there that Kato's not even looking at it. He's like, you know what? First do your thing. Like, balance is a big thing here in this matchup. Both players playing with multiple balances in their decks. There we see a Soul Ring being deployed by Urushisan. And just a pass, though. Wow. What a modest turn here after that Time Twister by Urushisan. Giving an opening here to Kato. If Kato has a balance here and a lot of artifacts to play out, it could be pretty devastating for Urushisan. And remember, Kato has to win this, already a game behind. And you can really see him taking his time, looking at the hand, thinking, okay, how can I take maximum advantage out of this? You know, he was kind of expecting to lose everything there. There's the balance. What are we going to see for 1 white? There we see a Lightning Bolt, so 1 red actually. So Kato dropping to 13, but this balance is going to do a lot of work. And there we see a Plateau. Although I think... shouldn't he discard down more cards, actually? Yeah, he is. Okay, so he's not playing out the Plateau, which was just making a decision about what cards he wanted to discard. So there's a dual land there into a Time Walk. Going to take an extra turn. So Kato on 13, Urushisan still on 20. But Kato is kind of leading the way here. There's another extra turn he's going to take, but he's got no pressure on the board. I'm sure he was wishing to still have the Juggernaut, so he could put in some damage. And let's see what he can do. Does he have a Serra Angel, perhaps? So Kato again taking a moment here. He's on 13, 1 game down. Has to win this to stay in it. This is the finals, by the way, of their Alpha 40 meetup. Here we see another duel. Is this a balance here? I mean, if you do the balance now, it's basically a mind twist for 3, right? Because I believe Urushisan has 4 cards in hand. Gets to keep only 1 card. And of course, Kato is going to lose his duels. Oh, look at this. He is going to play at Serra Angel. Then the balance wants to take care of the entire hand here. Chooses to lose his own Serra Angel because he wants to just take out the entire hand. So both players here in top deck mode, and Kato is kind of hoping to hit the better cards here from the top deck. There's an Ancestral Recall for Urushisan. This could make the difference. What do we see in that hand? Is that a Wheel of Fortune there for Urushisan? That is a Wheel of Fortune. So both players drawing 7 fresh cards. There we go. And yeah, this could be devastating here for Kato, this Wheel of Fortune. Are we going to see a Time Walk now by Urushisan? We do see a Soul Ring. Tapping to another Soul Ring. 1 mana still floating. Remember, this is with mana burn. There we see the Serra Angel, and there's the pass turn. No Time Walk. That's the only good news here for Kato, that there's no Time Walk here for him. There we see a Mox Pearl, a Mox Sapphire. There's another Soul Ring. There's a Black Lotus. I mean, look at all that real estate there. It's insane. I mean, he's got a lot of mana, but the question is, what are you going to do with it? Do you have a balance? Do you have a Time Walk? Do you have an Ancestral Recall? Do you have a Serra Angel? We don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I mean, Kato's on 13, 1 game behind, needs to do something. Cracking the Lotus. Okay, there's an Ancestral Recall, so 2 blue still floating. Can he do something with the 2 blue, or does he have to take 2 mana burn? Okay, there's the Time Twister, so 1 blue still floating. Oh, it's also very explosive. So both players are going to shuffle up. Unfortunately, Urushisan didn't have a red open to fire off that lightning bolt on Kato's life total. Urushisan still on 20, by the way. And Kato here on 13. There is the shuffle up. And I have to say, I'm enjoying myself. I'm liking this. It's completely, broken stuff. But, I mean, that's old school. That's Alpha 40. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. I mean, when I'm playing regular old school, I'm just really happy to see my Ancestral Recall because I just have a single copy, and I'm cherishing it and timing it and finding out the best moment to play it out. But in these games, you're like, oh, another Ancestral Recall, whatever. You're still liking it. It's still a good card, but there are just so many Ancestrals here, of course, in these games. Same thing goes for the Time Walk. And there we see Kato playing out another Mox Sapphire. I believe he's playing with 5 Mox Sapphires in total. And there we see a Time Walk. Still have the blue floating, I believe. There we see a Disenchant, taking care of the single Mox Sapphire here on the side of Urushisan. There we see a Black Lotus. And so I believe he still has an extra turn after this turn. What is he going to do with the Black Lotus? That's the big question. He's going to crack the Lotus. There's a balance, so then he still has 1 floating. 1 white floating, that is. So balance working here, taking care of the Serra Angel and the single land. I believe Urushisan still has to discard. But look at that, he's showing. I'm going to play out a Time Twister anyway, it doesn't matter. Oh, so many broken turns. This is crazy, crazy, crazy. So again, both players drawing a fresh 7. And I believe, right, that Kato still has that extra turn? I think so. Anyway, we'll wait and see. Players are shuffling up. It's got to be hard to shuffle that deck of Kato, by the way. He's doing a pretty good job. Drawing 7. And I'm actually not quite sure if the players are playing with proxies here. I don't think so. but I'm not 100% sure. There's a Juggernaut, there's a Pearl, there's a Sapphire. And I'm still curious if he still gets that extra turn. There's the Ancestral Recall, gonna draw 3. I think so, to be honest, but we're about to find out anyway. How many cards does he have in hand now? Maybe he has to discard down to hand size. There we see a Disenchant being fired off as well here, taking care of one of the Soul Rings. And now he's going to take that extra turn. Exactly, he still had a turn. So he's definitely going to attack for 5 here. He's going to put Urushisan on 15, first damage dealt. Does he have another Time Walk? That's the big question. I mean, these decks almost work like a Twiddle Volt deck in the way... Oh, there's a big Disintegrate. That's the end, apparently. Wow, going from 15 all the way to 0. And what I wanted to say is, because both players are playing with so many Time Walks, Time Twistering into Time Walks all the time, it's almost like you're playing against a Twiddle Volt deck, right? Once they go off, you know you're not going to get a turn anymore. So you constantly feel that pressure, like, this is my turn. I've got to take the max out of it. Anyway, wow, what an explosive game 2, and I'm quite happy that Kato won it, because that means we're going to an all-decisive game number 3. Game number 3, here we go. So Urushisan here on the plate. And it looks like Urushisan is taking another mulligan here. Not quite sure about the mulligan rules here, to be honest. Not quite sure why there's then a card taken out of the game, in this case the plateau. But maybe, you know, if you're watching this Urushisan or Kato, maybe you can enlighten me in the comments below. And here's the opening by Urushisan with a Soul Ring here. Island into Soul Ring. And that's it. Passing the turn here to Kato. And Kato opening here with the Mox Sapphire into an Ancestral Recall, so drawing 3, pretty sweet. Or we're also going to see, for example, a Black Lotus into a Time Walk, or some other broken shenanigans. There we see a Mox Ruby, tapping the Ruby for 1 red. There we see a Soul Ring, tapping the Soul Ring, untapping it. There's a Mox Pearl. There is a Tundra. There's another Ruby. I mean, look at these decks go. It's crazy. There's the Time Walk. So a very good first turn here for Kato in game number 3. The winner here is going to be the champion. This is their finals of their Alpha meetup. So these are the best 2 decks of the day. There we see another Sapphire. Are we going to see a balance? That's of course the question. Can he, well, there are 2 questions. Can he empty his hand even more and then play a balance? Or are we going to see Time Twister, Time Walk, something like that? We are going to see a Time Walk here. Is it going to be followed up by a Time Twister? That will be quite good here for Kato. Both players still on 20. There we see the balance. So he's going to lose. No, he's not going to lose the island. Both players have 1 land. Just 1 card in hand, though. So Urushisan has to discard quite a lot there. Only keeping 1 card. There we see the Juggernaut. And now he's going to take his extra turn. There's the attack. So putting Urushisan here on 15. Yeah, what a complete crazy first turn by Kato. And there we see an Ancestral Recall here by Urushisan. Can he get back from this? I'm sure he can. We see a Pearl in hand, Ancestral Recall, Brain Geyser, Disintegrate. Passing, it's going to drop to 10. He had a Juggernaut, is really hurting for Urushisan. Kato also playing an Ancestral Recall. Can he find a Time Walk? That would be quite good for him. Then he can hit again for 5. Gonna tap 3. Are we gonna see? Yep, there's the Time Twister. Ooh, things are gonna get really difficult here for Urushisan. If Kato can find a Time Walk here in his 7 cards, then he's very close to winning the match here. Remember, it's 1-1. This is game number 3. The winner takes all. Is going to be the champion of today's Alpha 40 meetup. Get to draw 7 new Mona Lisas. Now do remember, Kato is playing, or Urushisan is playing with balances, so he, disenchant, so he could maybe find a disenchant for the Juggernaut. We do see Kato here taking an extra turn with the Time Walk, so he can hit again for 5. There's another Juggernaut. Is this going to be the victory? Needs a disenchant here. There's Ancestral Recall, but Urushisan needs a disenchant. He's going to take his extra turn. That's it. Kato winning here. Oh, man. What an explosive game 3. This was the shortest of the 3 games, but, man, Kato definitely hit the jackpot. I mean, his turn 1 was super explosive. At the end of the day, Juggernaut gave him the victory. Well done. Congratulations, Kato, and also congratulations to Urushisan for making it to the finals. A big thank you to the old school Magic Tokyo community for sharing their matches here. I love watching these type of games. So Nikolai, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you are. Please send me more Alpha stuff. I love it. I love it. I love it. And also thank you for watching another episode right here on Timmy Talks, the channel where we talk old school Magic. And before you go, please leave a like, share this on your socials, and leave a comment. All these things are free and really help the channel move forward. Talking about moving forward, you can also become a patron of the channel. So if you enjoy the videos that I make, please consider becoming a sponsor of the show. Check out patreon.com/Timmy Talks.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Early in the morning, way hey, and up she rises. Way hey, and up she rises. Way hey, and up she rises. Early in the morning, put him in the longboat until he's sober. Put him in the longboat until he's sober. Put him in the longboat until he's sober. Early in the morning, way hey, and up she rises. Way hey, and up she rises. She rises early in the morning. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Early in the morning. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises early in the morning. What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Put him in the scoundrel. 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 Early in the morning, way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises, way hey up she rises early in the morning.
Igitus figitus somba kazik.